There are
Please,
moments
take
in
this.
life so
It's fresh
painfully
from the oven.
small that
It's
the
fresh
whole
from the
world
oven.
never notices them. A child standing in the doorway of
Thank
a
you
warm
so
bakery,
much.
a mother pretending she isn't hungry, the smell of fresh bread floating through the air like a cruel reminder of everything they no longer have. But sometimes, the smallest moments become the biggest miracles, and one simple request can change more lives than anyone ever imagined. Before we begin, if you believe kindness still exists, that second chances matter, and that one act of compassion can change a life forever, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that touch the heart. It was an unusually cool September morning in the small town of Franklin, Tennessee. The sidewalks were beginning to fill with people carrying coffee cups and rushing toward work while golden sunlight stretched across the old brick buildings downtown. Hidden among the busy streets sat a little bakery called Maple Street Bread Company, where the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls and warm sourdough drifted through the open front door from sunrise until closing. Inside, 38-year-old Nathan worked before dawn every single day. Life had not been gentle with him. After losing his wife, Rachel, to cancer 3 years earlier, he buried himself in flour dough and endless hours of baking. The bakery had become more than a business. It had become the only place where the silence didn't feel unbearable. Every loaf he baked reminded him of mornings they once shared, laughing over coffee before the world woke up. Most customers never noticed the lonely baker quietly working behind the counter. They came for pastries, smiled politely, and hurried away. Nathan had learned not to expect anyone to stay long enough to notice the sadness hidden behind his tired eyes. Late that morning, just as he placed a fresh apple pie into the display case, the bell above the door chimed softly. A young woman stepped inside wearing an old gray coat that had clearly seen better days. Her shoes were worn thin, and the canvas bag hanging from her shoulder looked nearly empty. Beside her stood a little girl with messy blonde curls, bright curious eyes, and a dress that had been carefully patched several times. The woman was named Sarah. Her daughter was Grace. Nathan watched quietly as Sarah glanced toward the menu board, then quickly lowered her eyes after noticing the prices. She squeezed Grace's tiny hand and whispered something so softly that almost no one could hear. "We have to go. We can't pay." Grace looked toward the shelves overflowing with warm bread, cookies, and pies. Instead of asking for food, she looked up at her mother with innocent hope. "Can we just smell it first?" The words froze everyone inside the bakery. Nathan stood completely still. An elderly customer quietly lowered her newspaper. Even the young cashier stopped counting change. Grace walked only a few steps closer to the display, closed her eyes, and took the deepest breath she could. A smile slowly spread across her face. "It smells like home," she whispered. Nathan suddenly remembered his own childhood. His father had lost his job when Nathan was only 8 years old. There had been nights when dinner was little more than buttered toast. He remembered standing outside a neighborhood bakery, breathing deeply because smelling fresh bread somehow made the hunger hurt a little less. He had promised himself as a child that if life ever became kind to him again, he would never ignore someone else's empty stomach. Without saying a word, Nathan disappeared into the kitchen. Sarah gently pulled Grace toward the door, embarrassed by what had just happened. Her face was burning with shame. She hated that her daughter had become old enough to understand what they could no longer afford. Before they reached the sidewalk, Nathan called after them. "Excuse me." Sarah turned nervously. Nathan carried a large paper bag across the room. "I accidentally baked too much today," he said with a gentle smile. "I'd really hate for it to go to waste." Sarah immediately understood the lie. The bread had just come out of the oven. Nothing about it was extra. Tears instantly filled her eyes. She tried refusing. Nathan quietly shook his head. "If you help me by taking it, you'll actually be doing me a favor." Grace hugged the warm bag against her chest, as if someone had handed her treasure. The smell filled the air. For the first time in weeks, Both mother and daughter smiled without pretending. Nathan thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The following Monday, Sarah returned. Not for food, for work. She explained that she had once managed a small cafe before her husband, Michael, died unexpectedly in a construction accident nearly 2 years earlier. Medical bills, rent increases, and impossible choices had slowly taken everything they owned. She wasn't asking for charity anymore. She simply wanted a chance. Nathan hired her that afternoon. She cleaned tables, washed dishes, served customers, anything that needed to be done. Grace spent afternoons quietly coloring in the corner after school, while the regular customers slowly got to know the cheerful little girl who always thanked everyone for every cookie crumb. Weeks turned into months. Business unexpectedly improved. Customers noticed something different about the bakery. There was laughter again. Sarah greeted everyone like family. Grace's drawings covered one wall, making the little shop feel warmer than ever before. People began sharing photos of the bakery online, not because of the pastries, but because of the kindness they felt every time they walked through the doors. More visitors arrived, sales doubled, then tripled. One December morning, a local newspaper published the story behind the bakery. After a customer quietly shared what had happened, the day Grace only wanted to smell the bread. The article spread across Tennessee. Soon people traveled from neighboring towns simply to support the little bakery, where compassion was served alongside every loaf. Nathan never considered himself a hero. He insisted he had simply remembered what hunger felt like. Months later, he created something called the Neighbor's Table. Anyone struggling financially could enjoy a fresh meal, with no questions asked. Customers who wished to help quietly paid for future meals by leaving small donations in a wooden box near the register. No one ever knew who received the meals. No one ever knew who paid for them. Only kindness kept moving from one stranger to another. Years passed. Grace grew taller. Sarah eventually became the bakery's general manager. Nathan finally found something he thought he had lost forever after Rachel passed away. Not another romance. A family. One afternoon, Grace, now 12 years old, stood beside Nathan while removing warm loaves from the oven. The bell above the bakery door rang. A tired father entered holding the hand of his young son. The boy stared silently at the fresh bread. Nathan recognized that look immediately. Before the father could apologize and leave, Grace quietly picked up a warm loaf, smiled, and walked toward them. She knelt beside the little boy and gently placed the bread into his hands. Then, she whispered words Nathan would never forget. Sometimes home begins with just the smell. Nathan looked away for a moment, because his eyes had filled with tears. The kindness that had once rescued one frightened little girl had now become part of who she was, and that was worth more than every dollar the bakery had ever earned. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Stories like this remind us that compassion is never wasted. Special request, comment below with the words, "Kindness costs nothing," if you believe one small act of compassion can change someone's entire life. Because sometimes the greatest gift isn't the bread itself. Sometimes it's giving someone a reason to believe that tomorrow can still be better than today.